The starship of Prince Ea moved slowly over the land. He examined the surface carefully. Enormous glacial ice sheets blanketed most of the upper and lower hemispheres. An equatorial strip was the only part left untouched. The prince and his crew had analyzed the data carefully. The landing site had already been selected. As the prince emerged and examined the area, the words of his father, King Anu, were clear. "Rebuild the devastated system," he ordered Prince Ea. The destruction of the world of Zuzu had been complete. The planet of red sands was reduced to dust and rubble. All traces of life were destroyed. Without life and plants, the atmosphere died. Ice sheets formed from the poles almost to the equator. Dakmu was frozen in its death, and its sister world, Dak-Amu, had been transformed into a planet of arid, scorched lands and deadly poisonous oceans. Aridu, the once rebuilt home of the rebel Zuzu, was also devastated. Only Iru, Targalu, and Baru remained relatively intact. The prince could not imagine what it must have been like to be in the middle of it all, in the center of the battles. He, like his brother, had been forced to flee. He looked up into the heavens. The prince knew his brother was overhead, somewhere on an orbiting military cruiser. He was up above, looking down on him. Prince Enlil was lord of the airways. "Rebuild," Prince Ea was commanded. The prince looked at the destroyed world. The task would be great. He would make sure to fulfill his father's orders. He would rebuild, and he would establish a mining operation extracting vital ores and precious minerals. He would rebuild the paradise world from the war-torn planet. And perhaps he would do a little more. Ea reveled in the thought. And so they began. Prince Ea and his volunteer crew, the Anunnaki. The chosen site for the initial compound had lots of water and fertile soil. Studies had revealed deposits of precious ores far below. It was the logical place to begin. Each of the members of the prince's crew had been chosen because of his or her special skills or abilities. Each one had been assigned the rank of lord. Each had been granted an amount of property in Aridu, and each was given a fair share of future monetary returns from the new colonies. The rewards were generous, the dangers considerable. The prince had taken his time in selecting his crew. The stakes were high, but he was proud. They were good. The first assignment was the construction of the base of operations. The compound would be built in stone, naturally durable and readily available. But as the Anunnaki began to set up the cutting lights and sound carriers, the generators ceased to operate. The natural energy grid lines of energy, common to all worlds, were fluctuating wildly on the planet. The Great Collision, the event which had created the world they stood on, had caused the inner core to become unstable, thus causing a constant wavering of the energy lines. To produce a stable supply of power, Prince Ea located a point where 6 energy lines naturally intersected. Here on the intersection, the prince erected a large energy house, a focusing center which would extract sufficient energy to run the construction equipment. Power crystals, specially grown for just such a purpose, were placed in the energy chambers. The energy house would also hold the reanimation center within its walls. Fatally injured technicians must be taken care of immediately. Prince Ea could not afford to lose even one of his carefully chosen crew. Footnote: as the dreaded DK were destroyers of life, so the Anunnaki were known as KD, the givers of life. End of footnote. And because the irregularly pulsating energy lines made starship instruments unreliable, the energy house was built with 4 highly reflective triangular sides that allowed an aerial orientation for pilots high above. Slowly, the power problems began to be resolved. But for much of the time, power anomalies made progress difficult in every aspect of the mining and construction projects. Field technicians were forced to perform unexpected physical labor to compensate for failed equipment. The Anunnaki were few, the laborers many. The Anunnaki complained. Prince Ea relayed the words to King Anu, but the king would not hear of their problems. Production would still have to increase. The Anunnaki felt overworked and ignored. They protested and threatened to seize their labors. Prince Ea promised an increase in future rewards. Grudgingly, but with additional recompense promised, the Anunnaki returned to their labors. Construction and mining recovery crews switched to lower consumption, cutting lights and sound wave movers. But lower consumption meant lower output. Production was slowed down, causing King Anu concern. To this end, Prince Ea began the use of beasts of burden to assist the Anunnaki. Progress in the operation slow, but there was progress. But in time, the operation was able to begin sending the gold shipments on schedule. Transport ships landed on Eridu and departed with their vital cargoes. Gold was immediately sent back to ASA, RRR. Other precious ores were sent right to the Baru and Targalu refineries. Even the tilting and erratic spinning Kakab Shanama began to show signs of life on its surface. Construction crews completed the stone structures of the compound, making the Eridu settlement look more like a city and not a mining camp. And in the center of the compound, a magnificent agricultural biological center was fast becoming the centerpiece of the stone city. The prince had done well. The great Anu was pleased. The Prince Ea's operation had allowed Anu to retain control of the Eridu solar system and keep his hold on the star lanes in the passageway. Ea had succeeded beyond the expectations of his father. His talents as a Genesis master had been put to the test and had exceeded the task. Tiamat was reborn. King Anu immediately sent a dispatch. Old Eridu, the conquered place, was dead. Eridu, the enslaved place, was alive. No one would ever doubt the power, the might, and vengeance of the ASA RRR king again. The name of the colony would serve as a reminder and a warning to anyone who sought to challenge or question the might of the great Anu. The hand of Anu would always be upon Eridu. Footnote: from Eridu come the words for earth, Erda German, Erda Old High German, Jord Icelandic, Airta Gothic, Jord Danish, Ertha Middle English. End of footnote. Prince Ea was assigned the title NG, Lord of Eridu. The devastated world was a living place again. Ea carefully manipulated and engineered animal and plant life forms that could endure in the harsh environment and poisonous nitrogen air of the planet. Atmospheric conditioning units began to make the air breathable and warmer. Often laboring for many time periods, the prince gave little thought to rest. But the continuing efforts of Prince Ea were not without their rewards. One of his ambitions, the establishment of a center for life sciences, an agricultural biological center, was actually achieved. An above-ground laboratory, their life center, and now the words are scratched out so I can't read. I can read only from which would be transplanted around the globe. The center became Prince Ea's pride and joy, a garden for life. Once again, the world began to take on the look and feel of a paradise world. Once again, the planet was alive. But though Eridu was once again a harbinger of life, The planets of Dakmo, Mars, and Dakamu, Venus, were forbidden to have life once again on its surface. The great Anu decreed that both worlds would remain barren. They would serve as warning to any potential challenger. The wrath of Anu was great. The agricultural center was also making great strides in creating new and unique life forms capable of surviving the atmosphere of Eridu. But the experiments occupied Prince Ea much of the time, taking him away from administration duties so necessary to a lord. The great King Anu was upset. The king of Asa RRR had put Prince Ea in charge of Eridu because of his Genesis abilities. Prince Enlil, his second son, was to remain in charge of the airways and lanes of the Eridu solar system. But Prince Enlil was once again making sounds of great displeasure in being placed so far away from the royal palace of Asa RRR. This further upset the king, and so he moved to resolve the problems. Prince Enlil was given administrative control of Eridu, the solar system, the planet, and the city. But control over the development and exploitation of the planets would remain with Prince Ea. Thus, dominion over Eridu would be shared. In this way, King Anu believed he could continue to keep an angry Enlil away from the court, fulfill his ambitions as a lord of power, and still utilize the abilities of Prince Ea. Prince Ea, still NG, was shattered and angry. All of his efforts and successes had been ignored, his place in the faraway empire stripped away. In anger, the Prince of Life left Eridu, moving to a distant region in order to build yet another agricultural biological center. Here too, he would develop a gold mining operation, but here he would focus on his passion, the engineering of life. Joined by his sister, Princess Ninhursag, also a Genesis scientist, both began a renewed effort in the creation of life forms for the planet of Eridu. And in this effort, Princess Ninhursag would be the creator of a hybrid creature that would forever change the destiny of Eridu and its ASA RRR masters. In the meantime, Prince Enlil would use his own skills to streamline the operation. Increasing production, calling for additional cargo flights, and demanding increased labors from the Anunnaki, Prince Enlil produced greater quantities of ore for less cost and in shorter time. This pleased the great King Anu greatly. But the demand for higher production stressed the worker Anunnaki to the breaking point. Fueled by the isolation and distance from loved ones, the anger of the Anunnaki became a work stoppage, a strike. When threatened with punishment, a group of Anunnaki attacked the palace of Enlil itself. His life threatened, Prince Enlil immediately called on Anu to descend to the faraway kingdom. Angrily, the king responded to the call from Eridu. Both Prince Enlil and the Anunnaki demanded an audience with the king. The angry laborers asked for the immediate removal of Prince Enlil. Even the prince himself asked to be removed. His desire was to return to the faraway royal high court of Asa RRR. Quietly yet firmly, Lord Prince Ea added his voice to the requests for the reassignment of his brother. Again faced with a serious situation, King Anu was forced to make his way to the troubled outpost. Arriving in the palace of Eridu, Anu immediately held a hearing for the purpose of resolution of the situation. The voices were loud and angry. Everyone presented his case for the return of Prince Enlil to the court of Asa RRR. No one asked for his continued rule. When the voices were finally quiet, the wishes of every member of the assembly was clear. Enlil must go. Everyone turned to the king. He sat in silence. He made no movement. He was sorely troubled. He had hoped that Lord Prince Enlil would somehow be kept in Eridu. The great and wise Anu found himself needing a solution. Seeing his opportunity, Prince Ea stepped forward. With Princess Ninhursag at his side, the prince proposed to his father and the assembly a simple solution. Within the life centers, he and the princess had engineered many hybrids for use in labor in the fields. By utilizing genetic substances from the ASA-RRR people themselves and the genetic materials of Eridu beasts, hybrid creatures of half ASA-RRR blood were created. The creatures retained their natural strength but also gained sufficient intelligence to understand commands. The earlier success of the HN lizard hybrid worker in the underground mines proved the worth of such an experiment. Other fabricated beasts, successful in specialized tasks only, were the Semt or a half-horse, half-ASA-RRR hybrid, capable of carrying burdens long distances, and the powerful Ment or a half-bull, half-ASA-RRR being with a capability of phenomenal feats of strength. The success of the hybrids had encouraged Prince Ea and Princess Ninhursag to attempt yet another untried combination, one which would resolve the difficulty at hand. King Anu sat forward in his throne. The possibility of a hybrid beast as a solution to his problems was intriguing. Prince Ea, seeing the interest of the king, turned to an awaiting Princess Ninhursag. He motioned to her. She made a gesture into the hallway. The show was about to begin. To the surprise of everyone gathered, a huge hairy black beast came forward. It was the Appa, a beast of the jungle, renowned for its strength and ferocity. Cries of protest and fear went up from the assembly. The beast was unchained. But before anyone could move, Princess Ninhursag gave the beast a command, which the beast calmly and obediently followed. And in the next few moments, while everyone watched, the beast obeyed every command of the Lady Genesis scientist. When the demonstration was completed, the prince explained his idea to the king. The creature, a beast of great strength and limited intelligence, could be genetically altered to become a laborer in the mines, taking the hardships away from the Anunnaki and freeing them for the more important tasks of construction. The great Anu was impressed. Indeed, the hybrid proposed seemed to be the solution. The murmurs of the Anunnaki seemed to be approving, Ea felt. He smiled, sure he had succeeded in removing his from Eridu. King Anu stood up. Prince Ea expected good news. Eridu would be his now, and Lil would soon be gone. The dominion of the solar system would finally be rightfully his. The king made his pronouncement. Prince Ea would begin the immediate genetic changes needed to alter the beast. All Anunnaki laborers would return to their operations until the new creature was ready for work in the fields. But to the horror of Prince Ea, the king ended his words with an announcement that cut like a knife into his being. Enlil would remain in charge of Eridu. The beast of Prince Ea would alleviate the situation and allow Enlil to stay. Such were the words of the king. So it would be. Prince Ea was shattered. He had once again been denied the throne of Eridu. Enlil, his lifelong adversary, was the victor once again. Storming from the palace, Prince Ea vowed he would never again enter the Eridu palace until the throne was his. Though he had been the firstborn son of King Anu, he would never ascend to the throne of ASA-RRR because Prince Enlil, the younger son, was born to King Anu by his half-sister, a requirement in the ASA-RRR rules of succession. And now the throne of Eridu had also been taken away from him. The enmity between the two had extended even to the very purpose of life itself. Enlil had believed the purpose of life was to give undying service to the kings and the throne of Asa. But the Genesis sciences had revealed something highly different to Prince Ea. Life controlled was not life evolved, as blasphemous as that might be in Asa. Prince Ea saw life as an opportunity for exploration of self. Born of the same blood and world, no two brothers could have been further apart in their ways. And so the words of the great Anu added to the already raging feud between the two princes. Prince Enlil would be lord of the world, command, and continue his iron rule, while Prince Ea would remain the Genesis lord, developing Eridu to the expectations of his father. Prince Ea resigned himself to his task, redesigning the beast his sister had initiated to suit the needs of the war community of the Anunnaki. With his sister beside him, the prince began the intricate procedures, but the anger was in his heart and would not leave his thoughts. And thus the revenge of Ea was born. Although directed to use the cellular material from one of the Anunnaki lords, specifically chosen by Prince Enlil, Prince Ea substituted cells of his own choosing for the experiment. The time for the uncovering of the true identity of the beast would someday come, and he, Prince Ea, would have the last laugh. Prototype after prototype was tried. Slowly, the beast was developed in intelligence without sacrificing strengths. Through experimentation in the field, the final product made its appearance. Rushed into service, the beast immediately proved itself. With strong arms and back, dexterity of hand, and intelligent enough to follow instruction, the creature's versatility soon created a strong demand by the Anunnaki for additional beasts. The Appa hybrid, known as Adapa, was an able beast, ready to serve his masters. Prince Enlil was unhappy with the beast from the first. He did not trust either the temperament of the creature nor his brother. The beast was dangerous. Controlling it was an undertaking he had no wish to do. There was a foreboding, a sense of trouble in Enlil's being. He could not rest easy. But forced to use the beast by his father's word, Prince Enlil decided to put the beast in the most perilous of work situations and in the most harsh environments. The creature was an experiment and therefore expendable. Demanding that beasts who fell from their labors not be relieved or tended to, the prince was responsible for the deaths of many of the creatures. They were, after all, only beasts. Prince Ea received the news with horror. The creatures, his experimental Adapa beasts, were being worked to death by his brother's orders. The creatures were not labor helpers. They became slaves, inconsequential, disposable slaves. Prince Ea had never felt such anger before. Everything, all of his efforts were being systematically destroyed. His reclamation of Eridu, the planet, his successful building of Eridu, the city, and the creation and engineering of a beast of labor. There was wanton destruction of everything Prince Ea had worked so hard for. His entire life story was an ongoing tale of submission to the whims of his brother. But now it would come to a halt. Prince Ea would strike back. He would have no more of his brother's dominance over his. He would make his brother pay for his sins through a vehicle unexpected, the beast. Returning to the agricultural center in Eridu, Prince Ea sought out the beasts in the garden where they fed. Finding several of them alone, he approached them. Careful planning and precise breeding schedules permitted only certain beasts to mate, and only under the strictest supervision. No beast could mate without the approval of the Lord of the Word. The results could be disastrous. But Prince Ea in the garden introduced the beast to a simple pleasure, the pleasure of spontaneous, unsupervised sex. Reacting from basic instincts, the beasts took to Lord Ea's instruction quickly. Playful at first, then earnest in their enjoyment, the beasts frolicked in the garden. The prince watched as the beasts revelled in the pleasure of intimacy. In a short life filled with agonies and labor, the brief moments of pleasure were godsend. And with this new knowledge, the beast could be as his masters, choosing a moment's pleasure without scheduling, without approval. The beasts looked back at the prince. He had given them a little taste of true happiness. Their creator, a Genesis scientist whose mark was two intertwined strands of DNA, like serpents mating, had endowed them with the knowledge of knowing. In time, the clandestine behavior of the beasts became known to their masters. Lord Prince Enlil, informed of the beast's disregard of establishment commands of conduct, became furious. An immediate command was issued to round up all of the offending creatures. Any and all renegade creatures were to be severely punished and instantly thrown out of the life center. Prince Enlil would tolerate no disobedience. Prince Enlil knew that somehow his brother had been the cause of the beast's horrendously criminal behavior. Only a Genesis scientist could affect the beast's temperament. Only Prince Ea could have had access to the creature. Enlil was being undermined by his brother. He knew it. But Enlil was not to be trifled with. To prevent further transgression, a new set of strict commands for Adapa beasts still within the life center and in the field operations was issued. Thus were issued the commands of the Lord of the Word. All beasts in the agricultural center must give complete and total obedience to Lord Enlil only. Loyalty to Prince Ea or any other Lord Creator, KD, was strictly forbidden. All beasts in the agricultural center must give complete and total obedience to Lord Enlil. All traces of Prince Ea and any other Lord Creator, KD, will be removed. Any beast carrying any remembrances of Prince Ea will be punished. All beasts in the agricultural center must give complete and total obedience to Lord Enlil. Any beast uttering evil sounds or angry sounds about Lord Enlil will be punished. All beasts in the agricultural center must give complete and total obedience to Lord Enlil. Every beast must attend an obedience lesson every 7th period. All beasts in the agricultural center must give complete and total obedience to Lord Enlil. The pairing together of beasts for mating must be approved by Lord Enlil. No beast may mate outside of the pairing approved by the Lord. Such were the commands of the Lord of the Word. Prince Enlil would not be challenged. He would keep an iron hand over Eridu. Let the beasts die in the wilderness. Let Prince Ea care for them. They are moose, monsters, and deserve no assistance. Let the renegade beast henceforth be called Ada Moose. Let the females suffer in childbirth. No longer will the birthing chambers be available to them. If the beasts of the garden remain faithful, they shall be allowed to remain. They shall be called Adapa. And so the beast was divided into two groups, the faithful and the unfaithful, the Adamus and the Adapa. Prince Ea was pleased, however, for in the cast-outs, a chance to continue the experiment to create independent life still existed. His desire to fabricate a life form that was intelligent yet independent of the system that Prince Ea and Prince Enlil had grown up in was still possible. The beast would have a chance at freedom and independence, something that he, the Prince of ASARRR, had not had. The beast had been a testament to the Genesis skills of Prince Ea, a Lord KD, Engineering the combination of brute strength with some measure of intelligence had been tedious, but the prince wanted more for the creature. Developing the beast's ability to speak had been a priority for Lord Ea. It allowed communication with the KDs and provided a means of measuring progress. Though the beast's vocabulary was quite minimal, it was understandable. Locating pockets of the rejected beasts in the wild, Ea and his sister Ninhursag began to teach them the skills of survival necessary in the cruel environment. From the first fire to the making of symbol clothing, from making scratches on cave walls to the reading of symbols, the beast was taken along the path to a higher intelligence by both lords of the Genesis sciences. The experimental prototype of Princess Ninhursag had gone through several stages of development, but it had proven to be unique in its abilities. In time, several of the beasts exhibited the exceptional ability of learning and communicating its knowledge to other beasts. Prince Ea and his sister began to focus most of the attention on them, teaching them so that they might begin to spread the knowledge to others. These teachers, taught by KD himself, became known as Su, they who knew. The Easu, the teachers, spread the way of Ea. Footnote: a later teacher of righteousness would bear the name Yesu, Jesus, a variation of Ea, Su. End of footnote. As the beasts in the wild progressed through the efforts of Prince Ea, Lord Prince Enlil became further angered with the creatures. Though many of the Adapa beasts still served loyally and faithfully in the Eridu compound, still the Lord of the World felt hatred and distrust for the creature. The AR flagship, the ASA RRR ship of state, was expected to arrive in Eridu soon. Knowing that the massive death ship caused an enormous gravitational pull, the prince decided to steer the course of the AR into the path he could utilize. By changing the path over the icy poles, the gravitational pull would be strong enough to cause glaciers to fall onto ocean. This in turn would cause needed environmental changes. If a resultant flooding destroyed the beasts, so be it. The Prince of the World could justify the sacrifice of the beasts in exchange for the warming of the planet, the increasing of the amount of usable ocean waters, and the end of an ice age gripping the upper and lower hemispheres. All of that was of significantly greater import than the fate of the beast. When Lord KD discovered the plans of his brother, he made immediate protest. But the Lord of the World would give no heed. And to make matters worse, Prince Enlil forbade a single Adamus be spared. Only the loyal Adapa would be given shelter from the floodwaters. The renegade beasts would be sacrificed if necessary. They had broken the commands. And the Lord of the World cautioned the prince, giving warning to the beast was aiding an enemy of the state, a heinous crime. Prince Ea was trapped. To work with rejected creatures, that was one thing. To give royal aid was another. With not much choice in the matter, Prince Ea gave his solemn oath to remain silent, giving no warning about the impending floods. Though reluctant to accept his brother's word, Prince Enlil continued his plans for the ceremonial arrival of the AR. But the Genesis prince could not allow his beast to die. In secret, Lord Ea made plans. Taking several of the beasts to the underground caverns of the Henti hybrids and other beasts to mountain highlands, Prince Ea assured the survival of at least some of the beasts. As a final measure, Lord Ea had a special cargo ship constructed that would sail far out into the ocean, away from the regions most likely to suffer. With these secret plans, Prince Ea kept Adamus alive and his experiment intact. When the mighty AR returned, the floods began as Enlil had expected them to. He felt relieved. The beast would not be around to disturb him anymore. When the flood subsided and Lord Enlil discovered the deceit of his brother, his rage was uncontrollable. The two princes confronted each other in the Eridu palace. Each had betrayed the other. Lord Enlil had attempted to destroy the prototypes of Prince Ea's beast in its early stages. Lord Ea had tried to undo his brother's administration by tampering with the beast's breeding. Enlil had tried to destroy the beast with a flood. Ea had broken a promise not to warn his creation, the beast. Each prince had committed a crime against the empire, an act of deliberate sabotage of the assigned duties of a royal prince of the throne. Neither would ever achieve the throne if that kind of behavior continued. But Prince Ea had never believed the throne of Easarr would ever be his. The rights of succession assured him of that. Prince Enlil, however, was the heir apparent. He could stand to lose everything. Prince Enlil, Lord of the World, had no choice. He made a decision. There must be a truce. Never again would he or any one of his administration interfere with Lord Ea's duty, the development of Eridu and all of its life forms. Lord Ea had no alternative but to return the promise. He and all of Cadiz would never interfere with Lord Enlil again. As a sign of his good intentions, Prince Enlil gave his brother agricultural implements for the beast, tools for him so that the beast could learn how to grow his own food. The Genesis prince was surprised but grateful for the gift from his brother. In exchange, Prince Ea promised to enhance the skills and abilities of certain special hybrids used by Lord Enlil in the administration of Eridu. Thus, for a time, the peace on Eridu came to be. Beasts were allowed to become educated and civilized. The empire of Eridu under Enlil grew and prospered. Genetic manipulation had given the beast the ability for minimal communication and understanding. Through engineered enhancement, the Adapas who remained in the garden were made significantly stronger in analytic thought processing. They became highly intelligent, capable of small-scale decisions, but remained docile and servile. Through the use of Adapos and Henti servants, Prince Enlil and the Anunnaki were able to make dramatic progress in the Eridu operation. The Adamus beasts, however, uncontrolled in their sexual activity, grew quickly in number. Genetic manipulation would be more difficult than producing specific traits in them. Any genetic enhancement would be subject to random breeding, the desired results probably watered down. At best, only some of the beasts would retain the desired attributes. Most of them would lose the hoped-for traits entirely. But through personal contact and his Easu, Lord Ea gave the Adamus beast what the Adapa would never get, a chance to appreciate beauty. Teaching the beast how to enjoy and feel the wonders of art and music, the prince inculcated a sense of self and awareness of the world around him. Untainted by any influences of the Easarr system, the Adamus developed a sense of belonging to a family and a sense of shaping and choosing his own destiny. The prince was pleased. The system would not take hold, not with the beast. It had a chance, or so he hoped. In an effort to ensure the beast would never again be desirable to the system, Lord Ea continued to enhance the sexual drive of the creature. If placed in a situation of choice, labors in the service of the system or pursuit of sexual pleasure, the beast would always choose sex. This would make the beast undesirable in the eyes of his brother Enlil. Two distinct beasts, the Adapa and the Adamus, were part of planet Eridu. Lord Prince Ea, a master Genesis sciences, was Lord El of the beasts, El Ea or Leo. Prince Enlil, Lord of the Command, was Lord of obedient servants. As word of Prince Ea's beast spread to neighboring stars and galaxies, Another group of Genesis lords extended a gift to Lord Ea, known as the Aku. They were descended from a bird-like ancestor. The Genesis lords presented Ea with a single strand of DNA filament that provided passion. With this one single element, the invisible motivating force that gave a being intense feelings was passed on to the beasts of the prince. And with this gift, the Adamus beast would have even more passion, more feeling than even the beings of the ASA-RRR empire themselves. Taken from the cells of the Aku, the offering became known as the gift of the feather. Thus, the paths of the two beasts, the Adapus of Enlil and the Adamus of Enki or Enki, continued to separate. Of the same roots, initially for the same purpose, the two were now on different paths. With time, Prince Ea and Prince Enlil were able to make both groups work together. The Adapa beasts completed their labors as obedient servants. The Adamus beasts completed the labors in exchange for food and supplies. As Eridu expanded from one compound into many, the use of both beasts became a commonplace occurrence. Eridu was a world of laboring beasts. The world of Eridu had become the new capital of the faraway solar system, a system nearly destroyed by the war with Lord Arzu and his rebels. Its restoration had strengthened the hold of King Anu on the ninth passageway, assuring that his place with the Aryan queens was secure. Eridu, capital city, Eridu, capital of world, and Eridu, the solar system, had become a thriving, productive system. But the way of the ASA-RRR always involved internal war. Offspring of both Prince Ea and Prince Enlil made constant war with each other. Jealousy, envy, and sheer want of power motivated members of the royal families to attack each other and seize holdings. And so long as the empire itself was in no way imperiled by the royal wars, they were permitted. It was good for the young to test their war mettle against each other. From these things, the way of the ASA-RRR was born. And since Prince Ea had given the beast the ability to learn and retain the knowledge, many royals began to use the beast in the administration of their small kingdoms, using a beast to control other beasts. To the horror of the prince, many beasts pledged fealty to their lords in exchange for an unending source of food and shelter. The one fear of Prince Ea had been that the beast might return to the system if its survival was threatened. And now the fear had been realized. But free will had been part of the experiment of the beasts. If Prince Ea interfered, he would defeat his own purposes in creating the beast. And so the beast learned war. The wars of the royals were merely planetary chess games with pieces comprised of servants and beasts. Reanimation, a technique for bringing a dead being back to life, and medical transplants were always available to the royals in case of an injury or fatality, but crippling injury, wounds, and death, that was for the lowly soldiers on the field, that was saved for the beast. But the beast proved itself again and again. Loyal and intelligent, the beast had become vital participants in the running of Eridu daily events. The ASA-RRR genetic background of the beast had a profound influence in its ability to learn and to adapt to the system. Through the guiding efforts of Prince Ea, the royals, and the Anunnaki, in time the beast was permitted to minister to its own affairs, to run its own small kingdom or territory, as long as it continued to pledge its loyalty and fidelity to one of the royal lords, and ultimately to the empire of ASA-RRR. And so Adama became part of Eridu. From a role strictly as a slave beast of labor to a role as a contributing member of society with an understanding of faithfulness to a lord above, the Adama had risen to a place above other creatures of the world, second only to his lord above. The wars of the royals raged on, faithful Adamas serving on the battlefields for them. Eridu kingdoms rose and fell on the backs and the blood of the Adamas. Children of Lord Enlil and Lord Ea constantly challenged each other over the rights of domain and power. And so began the era that would see the War of the Great Takeover, an attempt by Lord Prince Marduk, son of Lord Ea, king of the beasts. An accomplished master in the skills of the dark warriors, Prince Marduk wanted to become king of the system of Eridu, challenging other royal family members for the throne, including his uncle Prince Enlil, and even his father, Lord Ea. Marduk would use war, works of intrigue, and even the deadly art of betrayal to try to seize the throne. His father, Ea, had been deprived of the throne of Eridu and Asa-Arrar. He, Marduk, would not suffer the same fate. But in the midst of his rise to power, Prince Marduk was wrongfully accused of the assassination of his own brother, Lord Prince Dumuzi. Refusing to be imprisoned, Marduk chose to fight against his accusers, taking refuge in a pyramid fortress. A hasty council was called, the decision made to end the war by sealing Marduk into his stone structure. Trapped within, Prince Marduk was doomed to death. But fortune was with him. Several of his followers were able to tunnel up from beneath the structure, thereby giving Marduk an opportunity to escape. With a bounty on his head, Prince Marduk fled into the heavens. And for a while, peace once again came to Eridu. But as is the way of the Asa-Arrar Empire, it would not last long. High above within the stars of the Aryan Empire, Marduk would find an ally, an ages-old enemy of Anu and the queens of the SST throne, known as SSATA, underground ones. They were part of a reptilian rebel group who inhabited huge caverns within the worlds of the Aryan. Constantly threatening the queens in power, they unceasingly searched for new ways to undermine the rule of the queens. Despised and dreaded, the SSATA rebels gave audience to the prince, promising them great wealth and power and full participation in his empire in exchange for their support. A daunting Marduk elicited their support. Eagerly, the SSATA seized the opportunity to support an effort against the Asa-Arrar. By weakening the Dak Empire, so too the SSST queens would be weakened. Perhaps enough so that their own rebellion in Aryan would succeed. Sending a communique throughout the Aryan Empire to their allies, the SSATA raised huge numbers of warriors, each a dedicated and willing enemy of the SSST queens. By secretly supporting Marduk, success in the takeover of the Eridu colonies would give the SSATA rebels a tremendous stranglehold on the Ninth Passageway. The SSST queens would have to negotiate with them. Should the rebellion not succeed, the death of Marduk would satisfy both the Syrians and the queen. The failure of a civil war far away from the SSST empire would be tolerated by the queen. Once again, the specter of a war loomed on the horizon of the Eridu solar system. But the success of another rebellion in Eridu was remote at best. The great Anu had gone to great lengths to assure himself that another war of revolution could not occur. To succeed, there would have to be yet another group who would have to give active support to Prince Marduk, one that had a firm foothold within the Eridu solar system itself and was part of the integral Enlil forces of command. Deep within the mining operations, the Hen-T hybrids had proven themselves as loyal servants. Long before the Adamus had done so, the Hen-T hybrid had risen to a position as one of the royal families of Eridu most faithful administrators. And although many of the royal offspring families had used the Adamus beast as administrators over other beasts, Prince Enlil had continued to use only the Hen-T, considering them to be less of a threat and much more obedient. Key mid-level administration positions were assigned strictly to the Hen-T hybrids and never to an Adama beast. Unlike the Adamus beast, Lord Prince Ea had not manipulated the Hen-T to a higher intelligence, thus making it more servile and less of a choice maker. But more crucial to the planned war of darkness by Prince Marduk, the Hen-T was created from the cellular materials of lizards. It was therefore a reptile. At distant relations of the SSATA rebels, they could be approached and possibly persuaded. With the behind the scenes of the SSATA, the prince and an army of masters of deceit began their campaign to seduce the Hen-T servants of Lord Enlil, promising the Hen-T that they would become his administrators. If the takeover was a success, Marduk and the SSATA used every trick to swing the Hen-T over to the rebel side. Marduk even offered shares in the wealth and riches of the empire and future territory for their control. Their place in the empire of Marduk would be second to none but the prince himself. And so the secret takeover began. Using Hen-T hybrids created and developed by the Arianas SST for their own use, the vengeful Marduk secretly maneuvered his agents deep into the mines, the administrative offices, and the command forces of Enlil himself. As the Hen-T hybrids had moved up in the ranks of Prince Enlil's administration, they had become known as Chet. Those of the Chet, the word being Enlil, referred to as the Sheti or Shet by the administration members of Enlil. They became trusted servants of both Lord Prince Enlil himself and the royal families. Their loyalty was never in doubt. No one suspected the betrayal. Slowly and quietly, the conspiracy began. The plot was simple. SSATA lizards trained for subterfuge would infiltrate the ranks of the Hen-T workers. They would spread the word and recruit their distant cousins to the rebellion. In short time, the Shet were able to persuade the Hen-T lizards to enter the folds of the rebels. The Hen-T who joined with the plot became known as Shet-I, the secret ones. Following the initial infiltration of the ranks of Hen-T in the underground operations, the conspiracy moved into the very inner core of the administration of Lord Prince Enlil. The command forces, including the communication and logistic departments, were also targeted. Carefully and deliberately, the conspiracy gained a foothold in every department of Lord Prince Enlil's administration. In time, Prince Marduk and the hidden Shet-I were ready. Word was given to begin the attack. Invading Eridu with his warships, Marduk attacked viciously and unmercifully. Eridu, Dak, and BH forces were surprised. Hen-T workers in communication rooms disrupted messages of the invasion, preventing effective defensive action. When finally notified, the Dak warriors responded in warships that had been sabotaged, thus rendering them impotent. Many ships were detoured or given wrong coordinates. Eridu communication systems were silent. Enlil was undone. The Shet-I and the turncoat Hen-T hybrids had done well. Eridu, the island outpost of the SARR Empire, was now the seized empire of Lord Prince Marduk, son of Prince Enki and grandson to King Anu. Marduk had been victorious. The war of takeover, backed by the reptilian rebels, had been successful beyond expectations. The stealth and subterfuge, the hidden deviousness, had prevented direct confrontation. Prince Enlil and his followers fled back to the distant worlds of ASA-RRR. Prince Ea took many of his followers and Adamus beasts to his star system, Baal Ea Daos, Pleiades, place of Baal Lord Ea Da, the creator. The royal offspring of both of Lords Ea and Enlil were also forced to flee. As Marduk landed on the world of Eridu, his place on the throne was unchallenged. To ensure that no challenge might occur in the future, the prince immediately ordered a search for any remaining loyal heirs. Their choice would be easy: total subjugation or death. The entire Eridu Empire would bow to Marduk. He would see to that. Once seated, Marduk began his final campaign: to change or destroy any records which attributed any heroic or kingly achievements to anyone other than himself. Stone monuments, obelisks, and edifices were altered by stone cutters. Tablets of clay or wood were burnt or destroyed. No records of any other monarch would remain. Marduk had become the beginning and the end of all things. He had appointed himself Lord God and Creator of the universe. Henceforth, he was the sun god Ra. And so the records of Eridu were changed. The rulership of Ra Marduk was total and retroactive. Only one change remained to be made. Records were given a new face, but memories were left. Using the mind-altering techniques of his SSATA reptilian minions, the new king RRA, Ra, ordered the systematic alteration of the minds of the beings of Eridu. To accomplish the monumental task, the SSATA converted existing structures with chambers for reprogramming. One by one or in groups, the colonists and the beasts, Adama and Adapa, were promised wealth, property, power, sexual favors, any enticement which would draw the victims into the tunnels leading into the brightly lit reprogramming rooms. Once inside, memories were erased or altered. Screen memories, images designed to hide recollection of the event, were often implanted. The sun god Ra would be the only one, the only god on record, the one and only god of memory. Colonists or beasts who refused voluntary treatment were seized and forcibly taken into the memory alteration chamber for adjustment. Some Easu fled into the wilderness or high mountains, there to engrave in stone clues to the secret of the takeover, the sun god Ra, and the Shet, before their capture and reprogramming. Somehow the truth would come to light again. The clues, however, would remain hidden until uncovered and recognized or deciphered. The face on Mars and the domed cities of the moon are two examples. In time, the Shet-I completed their task. The populace of Eridu had forgotten. As they went their separate ways, however, they each had a vague uneasiness. Something was not there anymore. Something was missing. And curiously, though they seemed not to have common backgrounds, each remembered, each recalled a bright light at the end of a tunnel. And each one knew that they were supposed to go to the light and enter the light, for there their ultimate reward resided. As insurance, the SSATA took one more precaution. To ensure the passion instilled in the beast, the gift of the feather did not give impetus to rebellion. The rebel lizards constructed huge towers which would transmit a cloud of electronic signals designed to keep the beast in a fog, a docile state. The electronic blanket also served as a cover, preventing outside signals from reaching the beast. No one, not Ea, not Enlil, nor the Aryan queens would be permitted to contact the beast. To further control the beast, the houses of obedience of Prince Enlil, where the beast visited every 7th day for obedience lessons, were taken over by the SSATA. Doctrines which would support the empire became dogma. The teachings, the ways of Ea, became evil, and the words of a demon, Ea, a life-giving KD, God, became Da-E-Ba-El, Creator Ea, Lord Father, the evil one, the diabolic one. But the Shaddai would leave nothing to chance. Should an innocent clay tablet surface with a story of ancient beings, half man and half beast, star beings that flew into the skies, or a rebellious god on Mount Olympus, these were the fables and myths of an imaginative, primitive man. These were tales of fantasy, nothing more. The rational man, the working man, should not concern himself with the things of children. The denial of the world before Lord Ra was complete. Shut-eye lizards, who had taken an active part in the takeover and reprogramming, were elevated to the status of overlords and administrators of existing systems and laborers. The era of the Syrian lords and masters was gone. Prince Enlil, the lord of the world, was gone. The golden era of growth and development was gone. Eridu, a primitive solar system developed into a stronghold by a king of the star Sirius. Eridu, a planet virtually destroyed in a war of rebellion led by warlord Zeus and reconstructed by Genesis scientists. Eridu, the first settlement and city of the reborn planet. Eridu, the place of conquests and wars, the place of subjugation and kingship from the stars, was now Eridu, a world with a reconstructed history, a fabricated past. Ra, was the sun god, but the reptiles were in charge. As the ASARR had done before them, the Shaddai began to increase the production and efficiency of the operation. In addition, however, they entered into the development of the production of a new commodity, a drug called Esma. Once a drug used only by kings, the Shaddai began to make and sell the drug to all the galaxy beings. Prophet Sword and Lord Ra fast became one of the wealthiest king in all the 9th sector. With his amassed riches, Ra built an empire and an army second to none. His alliance with the SSATA had given Lord Ra the wherewithal to keep the Anu and other warriors conquerors at bay. Lord God Ra would live forever, or so he hoped. The great Lord God Ra ruled with an iron hand, the ways of the SARR still in his veins. The Shaddai ministered to the rule of Eridu efficiently and coldly, but Lord Ra did not trust the Shaddai. If they would betray their own queen, they would not hesitate to betray Lord Ra. The Shaddai were cold-blooded reptiles, unsympathetic to any race. And even though he was God, Ra was an outsider. Their relationship, their alliance, was business and no more for them. Ra knew they could not be trusted. Lord Ra moved to place his most trusted priests and his children in control of the empire. Known to all as Ra-Ka, Ra the Lord Father, he instructed his children in the management of the wealth of the empire. As they were assigned their positions, they became known as Ra-Kam, a child of Ra. Later times would see Ka-M converted to Kam, the name for a shield. This would give the children of Ra a new name, Ra-Kam, those of Ra's shield. To keep control of the crucial reanimation center, Lord Ra had selected an elite group of priests to protect and be responsible for the chambers. They would also serve as Lord administrators of the affairs of the empire. Recognized as the royal Ra-Ka-Per-A or the Ra-Ka-Pharaohs, they served as loyal minions to the Lord Ra. But the Lord God Ra was not omnipotent. His power, his empire was dependent on the Shaddai. Recognizing his throne was vulnerable, Lord God Ra reconsidered the possibility of a reunion with the empire of ASARR. His wealth and power surely gave him bargaining power, he felt. Lord God Ra was in need of another alliance to protect himself. It was, however, too late. Before he could do anything, in the darkness of night, a coup took place. No violence, no battle. The Shaddai simply and quietly took everything over. As the sun rose over the palace, the Shaddai were in control. All elite warrior guard forces of the Lord Ra were imprisoned or eliminated. There remained only the task of capturing God Ra himself. But fate was with the Sun King. Loyal followers of the king entered his royal quarters to rouse him from his sleep. To his good fortune, an escape plan had been devised to take him away from the grasp of his pursuers. With the reptilian guards at his heels, Lord Ra narrowly escaped. As he gazed down from his starship high above, he looked down on what was once his magnificent empire, but now it was gone. The kingdom of Ra was no more. With the departure of Lord Ra, the era of the empire of Syrian rulership over Eridu was over. Eridu, a solar system that had suffered through devastating and destructive wars, had fallen to the SSATA reptiles without battle. The underground beings had successfully undone the empires of the sun god Ra, the Prince Enlil, the great King Anu, and even the Aryan SSST queens. The SSATA became lords of the SMA market, a profitable illicit trade, and masters of the ninth passageway, the star lanes necessary for travel to and from the central stars and the Aryan Empire. In one quick, bold move, the SSATA made themselves one of the most powerful and richest races in the ninth sector. Control of the solar system would not be left to chance. Manipulation of the minds of all of the inhabitants, including the control of the minds of the offspring of Ra, his trusted priests and all members of Ra's court, was done immediately and completely. What Lord Ra had started, the SSATA would finish. Erasure of memories and the control of minds would be expanded to include his own family and court. Henceforth, the Ra's shield and the Raka pharaohs would be the faithful, if unwitting, servants of the reptiles. The Adama beasts continued to labor for their new lords, unaware of the changes, unaware that they were slaves. Life meant working daily for the masters. If the beast performed well, the future meant being put out to pasture. Somewhere in the dim recesses of its mind, the beast recalled memories of a past life. There is more than what we are being told, the beast would say to itself. The beast was right.